Hi everyone, this is Harshit Raja and this is the Endgame recap of round 1 from Chennai Grand Masters. We are going to take a look of the game between Vincent Keymer playing with the white pieces against Nihal Sarin playing with the black pieces, and this was the endgame position of the day. In this position, Nihal played the move rook to h7. This was a crucial mistake because after rook c7, which was a great move played by Vincent, Nihal was banking on rook to h2 check, deflecting the white king. He thought that after the king captures the rook, he can promote a new queen, and it feels as if black is completely winning, but Nihal missed this. With just a few seconds on his clock, that rook to f7 check will be a disco against the king and the queen, and this is completely winning for white whenever the black king moves, your queen is falling. Nihal, after realizing this, tried the move rook to h8, but after b7, threatening b8 queen, bishop a7, rook c8, Nihal resigned. Instead of making this move rook to h7, the best move in this position, king to e4. The king is a very important piece in the endgame, and Nihal had to bring it in the center, trying to go king e3, king e2, using this f2 pawn as an asset, trying to create some chances. This was very important. If the white rook tried to stop the black king, black could have now played this move rook to f7, threatening f1 queen. If the king goes back to f1, we can just come back rook b7. It's very hard for white to make progress because if this rook moves somewhere, this pawn on b6 is hanging. And that's why this could have given black great chances. And that's why this position was the endgame position of the day. And this is the endgame recap of the day from Chennai Masters round 1. This is the game between Vidit Gujarati playing with the white pieces against Jorden Van Forest playing with the black pieces. Jorden played really inspiring chess today, and it was this position which was extremely interesting, as we can see that the white knight on h1 not very active, the king on g1 feels a bit dangerous with the queen being on b6. Can you try to guess the best move for black? Pause the video for a few moments here and try to find the best move for black. After you're back, I hope you found this incredible move that was played by Jorden, bishop to a6. It's incredible because your knight on d7 is hanging, but Jorden wants to exchange this bishop on b5, which is controlling the very crucial e2 square, which the rook on e8 would love to go to. Vidit captured the knight on d7 and now jumped the rook on the 7th rank. Jorden Van Forest trying to put pressure on the king. The queen went back, and now another energetic move that was played by Jorden, pawn to h3. This was incredible, trying to distract this white bishop from here. If you capture the pawn on h3, d3 check, knight to f2, bishop d4, hitting the knight on f2. The bishop goes back, and Jorden understood the position extremely well, figuring that when he plays this move pawn to d2, white's position is completely paralyzed with this bishop eyeing in, this rocket hitting the black king, and it's just white king, and it's just completely winning for black. That's why Vidit in this position tried to just capture the pawn with his pawn, and here was a big blunder by Jorden Van Forest. He could have just played this move bishop to d4, hitting the knight on f2. The bishop goes back to h4, and now another, when you have sacrificed a piece, you need to play energetic chess, and here was another energetic move, queen to d6, hitting the bishop on d7, but at the same time wanting to go queen to f4, hitting this bishop on h4 and this pawn on f3, and this was completely winning for black. Instead, Jorden just had a mind slip, maybe because he captured this pawn on b2 with his rook, which allowed Vidit to play rook to b1, and after this he exchanged this very crucial piece of black which was putting pressure on the knight on f2. Vidit was completely winning after this move, but in the time scramble Jorden managed to find a trick and the game ended in a draw. But the move bishop to a6 was the reason why this was the middle game recap of the day. Hi everyone, now we are going to look at the opening recap of the day from Chennai Grand Masters round 1. This game was played between Pranesh M versus Aryan Chopra in the challengers section. Pranesh, playing with the white pieces, started with e4. Aryan went for the Karo-Khan opening with c6, d4, d5. Pranesh chose the advanced variation with pawn to e5. Aryan played pawn to c5, trying to put pressure on the pawn on d4. And it feels as if black wasted a move with c5, but unlike French, the bishop on c8 can come out to f5 because it's not restricted by its pawn. So a slightly nuanced idea there. White goes for knight f3, black captures, knight takes, black goes knight c6, trying to exchange this knight on d4 and also putting pressure here. So white just captures, pawn takes, bishop d3, e6, trying to go c5 and developing the bishop. White castles. And already it feels as if white's position is slightly more developed. However, black has gotten these cluster of pawns in the center, which gives him a compensation for not being developed. Knight e7, trying to either go knight g6 or knight f5. White develops his knight, knight d2, very logical. a5, trying to go bishop to a6, exchanging the most active piece in white's position. Knight f3, bishop a6, white took, rook takes. And now I really like this idea, pawn to c4. Because the black king is in the center, you want to open up the position and put pressure on the black king. Black played knight g6, c captures d5, c captures d5 because you always want to capture towards the center. And I think this position is definitely one of the most important positions from this opening. And I want you guys to pause for a minute to try and find the move Pranesh played in this position. After you're back, I hope you found this very creative idea by Pranesh, pawn to h4. Putting pressure on the knight on g6, threatening h5. Of course, black cannot capture the pawn on h4 because queen to a4 check hits the king and hits the knight. Of course, this is completely winning for white. That's why after knight g6, Aryan felt obliged to play pawn to h5, stopping white's advance. And after this pawn to h5, white played queen e2, hitting the rook on a6. The rook went back, bishop e3, just developing, bishop e7, and g3. And after this position, Aryan realized that he cannot castle now. Because if he castles, white will just move this knight from, let's say after bishop d4, move this knight from f3 to h2, and there's no way black can protect this pawn on h5. And that's why I think that this move that Pranesh had played, pawn to h4 in this position, was the reason why this position is highlighted in this opening recap of the day. After h4, forcing black to play h5 and making it a weakness. Fantastic opening idea by Pranesh, winning a smooth game with the white piece in the first round.